Welcome back to Geeky Reviews. I'm your host, Michael Wilkerson. This is going to be my review for Season 1, Episode 3 of The Flash, titled Things You Can't Outrun. So this episode begins with Barry running through the streets of Central City, giving a monologue, talking about the theme of outrunning things in your life. Things you can outrun, things you can't outrun. The point is, we're always running in these situations in life, whether it's from a good thing or from a bad thing. Sometimes you're running towards a good thing and sometimes you're running towards a bad thing. I really like this theme that they give this episode, as it's pretty much sets the tone for pretty much every character at Star Labs. So this is also a kind of flashback episode for 9 months ago, the night the particle accelerator exploded and the aftermaths of that. So we get a few storylines this episode. Most notably, that's how it affects Caitlyn. Sometimes we get some how it affects Cisco too, but the idea of Caitlyn's fiance Ronnie dying, and so we get to learn about how Caitlyn met Ronnie the night of the basically how they kind of met at Star Labs. He was the structural engineer working on the particle accelerator, working on the pipeline. And she always, how she kind of described him was that they were always different. They were like fire and ice. They were complete, total opposites, but he always knew how to make her laugh. And I really like this. It's obviously a setup for her becoming Killer Frost down the line. And of course, a nod to Ronnie becoming Deathstorm. Or Firestorm, I should say. They haven't gotten to Deathstorm yet, but that's the Earth 2 doppelganger stuff that they get into. And then in later seasons, they even do it in Season 8 with the more comic accurate Deathstorm. But this time around, they're kind of setting it up for him to become Firestorm. They're like fire and ice. And I really like this parallelism that they were complete opposites, but... And you could tell because obviously Caitlyn is the kind of character that is very guarded. She's very much like, she has this blank expression of her since the night that Ronnie passed, but there's a reason for that. And I don't know if she was always like this. We obviously get some teases that she was happy, obviously, but she's obviously, I think, more of a guarded kind of character. She is a doctor, as probably most doctors would be. They're kind of more, on guard or more stoic, because they have a lot of patients' lives are on the line, so they have to take it seriously. It's kind of that idea. So I like that fact that, especially since she is like a doctor, that they give her that kind of more standard stoic kind of like blank expression, that she's not always smiling and all that kind of personality, but she also has some tendencies when she was with Ronnie that she could lighten up a lot. And that's what makes it hurt more too, is because we get to follow their relationship. Like, he was there, working from day one on the particle accelerator, and of course, as they were there turning it on for the first time, we see that. But it also, what I really like this is it also affects Cisco, because Cisco's another engineer, so it's kind of cool to see them interacting and all of that, and bonding over their ideas of engineering and all of that. But I also like the more dramatic side of it was where we got to see Cisco and Ronnie, where Ronnie knew that the blast would really impact, not only Star Labs, but also the city. It's a very loud bang, as we get to see. But it could really, cause people to get injured. So he has that mentality of well, we have to close off the blast doors. We have to contain, the blast inside of the accelerator. And even if that means I have to be inside, just lock me in here so that none of this blast gets out and hurts people. Obviously, the blast does affect a lot of people, so it didn't do so much. And honestly, we didn't really see him die just yet. So from what I remember, he does go on to become Firestorm. So this is just the kind of a tease that he did survive somehow, and that's probably going to be Caitlyn's arc mainly this season, is trying to figure out what happened to Ronnie, after that night, because we only get really brief flashbacks of him being in the accelerator and causing this explosion, and we never really see him die. So most notably, every time someone dies off camera, they say they don't really ever die. So this is going to be signs that they're going to somehow bring him back, I would assume. Another thing, so this next part of it, it's kind of the more slower parts of it, but again, we get to see Iris and Barry reconnecting for the first time, or not really reconnecting for the first time, but reconnecting and going to movies and stuff like that. And all of that. I really do like this aspect of the show. It gives it a chance to slow down a little bit and show some of their chemistry. It's really cool that they get to, as much as I hated the love triangle thing, I do think it is still kind of cool that they let Barry and Iris be friends, especially Eddie is okay with her hanging out with Barry at the beginning of it and all of that. I really like their kind of quirky. Barry's more quirky. Iris is more like kind of in the zone of what's happening in the real world. Like, she doesn't know there's like a zombie movie scale, like Barry says, or there's like this, I don't know. Yeah, there's not like this like nerd. He just goes on for a full nerd. And I again, it's just one of the sucker things I like about like the early season of The Flash, is seeing this kind of version of Barry Allen. But I think just with every character, it just feels like everybody's just having fun and all that, which I do like. The next thing I do like about this episode is Joe. We get to see him working with Star Labs a little bit more, being understanding, but he also comes to terms with the fact that these metahumans that they're stopping, they need a place where they can imprison them, and Iron Heights is not equipped for that. So he goes to Star Labs, and some of this episode, if not a majority of it, is Dr. Wells, Cisco, and Caitlyn trying to develop this makeshift prison down below, more or less Dr. Wells and Cisco. But because Caitlyn is more scared to go down there, just because of after seeing Ronnie dying, and she just has so many memories down there. It's more Cisco and Wells that kind of take the forefront and kind of build and develop this makeshift prison to house all these supervillains and all these metahumans, essentially. For this show, which I thought was a pretty cool development. It was pretty cool to see the fact that Star Labs and Dr. Wells and Cisco and Caitlyn, they're all kind of taking responsibility for housing these metahumans they created. And at first it was kind of weird that like they were kind of like have all their metahumans stay underground, like underneath them. And they're just going to be working above it, and they actually do acknowledge this. But again, it makes sense because they do have this like big area down there where they can, keep them contained and nobody can escape and all of that, which is really nice. It's like very like, I don't know, like glass proof, like they can't really break out of it, I guess, if that makes sense. So that was really cool in developing. The metahuman of the week we get to see is Kyle Nimbus, who turns into poisonous gas. Like Danton Black, I couldn't take his character too seriously, but I do think he was more menacing than Danton Black was, so I will give it that. It is a return to form, kind of like how Martin was in the first episode, this third episode. He is like, obviously he turns to poisonous gas, but they do give him kind of a personal reason with this judge that executed him, that set his trial, all that kind of thing, and sent him into prison and all of that. But it's kind of interesting that like he comes back after he died, so it's kind of a different take on. It's like somebody that is basically revived from the particle accelerator versus like just gaining powers right off the bat. And I think that's kind of their intention with these metahumans is they're reviving them. People might have thought they died that night, but they ended up getting revived and getting more of like an electrical jolt to like bring them back to life almost, and like an electrical charge or something. So yeah, I like this kind of thing. I thought the visuals for the gas was pretty solid. Not my favorite aspect of it, but I thought it was pretty cool. I do like the added, like how they kind of defeat him was him having to kind of reform himself. Like he got, in a way, it's kind of like he was really tired and he had to like reform his particles, his gas particles, so that he would turn into human. Then like he just, like Barry had like maybe like a millisecond or a few milliseconds or a couple milliseconds before he could punch him again and actually stop him. I really did like that aspect of it. It was kind of a clever way to do it because he kept going back to his form. It wasn't just all CGI. So I'll give it that. But yeah, I think overall, I really thought this episode was pretty solid. I think I actually enjoyed this more than the second episode. I'm going to give this episode an 8 out of 10. So I actually thought it was a lot better of an episode. I think the only really weakness I would give this episode would be maybe Eddie and Iris still doing that thing. But I am glad that they did reveal to Joe that they were dating. At least. And I'm glad they didn't do the third person kissing in front of Barry thing. I know that's probably going to come back soon, so I'm not anticipating it's gone forever, but I am glad they got rid of it from the last episode. And it wasn't too in your face, like it wasn't the main focus. Like obviously Iris and Eddie have the relationship, but it's not too in your face and like, oh well, we're going to kiss in front of Barry and stuff like that. So I'm glad they didn't do that. I actually feel like Eddie was a little bit stronger this episode. He did at least kind of bring up like the Darbinian crime family, and like he was working and learning from Joe, what's it called, the case and how to case the environment, canvas the witnesses, and just kind of, so I did like that aspect of it. Obviously wasn't in his intention, but when he went back to the apartment to see Iris obviously was his intention, but obviously he was, hiding the fact from that until Joe found out. But I am glad that Joe found out finally this episode. But I don't think there's much of a weakness other than maybe some of the CGI. Some I think they did do a lot of good things this episode. That actually improved upon the first couple episodes, especially the second episode they improved upon, especially the villain. But let me know what you guys think. What was your favorite part of The Flash Season 1, Episode 3? And if you enjoyed the review, as always, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys in the next Geek Reviews video. Peace.